everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's Rees. I'm the Managing Partner at Convergence. If you're not already familiar with Convergence, we're a specialist search firm. So we work with companies to help them find key talent, typically for leadership roles, but also for specialist positions. The common thread tends to be companies that are looking for exceptional people and want us to undertake a really exhaustive market search to find them. We have a super experienced team here. They're all long-standing experts in the particular disciplines they recruit. And we cover pretty much every function you'd expect to see in an exec team. So finance, IT, people and culture, sales and marketing, operations, legal and risk. So we've got most of the bases covered. And a lot of our clients use us as a single trusted solution across multiple functions. The webinars that we do and these and other events, part of our effort to try and contribute to wider conversations, particularly around some of the key topics that are affecting HR, that are affecting talent acquisition, and anything that's affecting the world of work in general. So today I'm joined by Candice Payne. Candice is a people and talent strategist. Early in her career, she worked for Deutsche Bank in London. Also, she was an advisor to the GM HR at MSD. She then spent over 6 years in the talent acquisition function at Xero, and during what was a period of hyper growth. She became the global head of talent operations before moving into a role as the global head of talent. Both those roles involve building talent acquisition capability at scale across multiple geographies. She left Xero at the end of last year, and she now consults to a range of businesses, advising them on how to develop their talent strategy and how to optimize talent acquisition processes. So really looking forward to hearing from her. I know that helping organizations to build a really great candidate experience is something that's close to her heart, as it is to mine. I think there's very few areas that have got the same potential for improvement. We've all heard countless stories about how people have been treated through recruitment processes. So there's absolutely a lot of ground to be gained. Just to kick things off this morning, we thought we'd start with a quick poll, just to get a sense of how often you're reviewing your approach to candidate experience and which aspects of it you found the hardest to tackle. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that, just give you a minute or two to ponder it. Although often with these things, I think your first instinct is probably your best gauge. While that's underway, please keep in mind, we really want to make this session as useful as possible for all of you and make sure that you're getting what you're looking for from it. So if you've got thoughts or questions along the way, please feel free just to put them in the chat. So I'll keep an eye on that. I'll try and weave them into the conversation if I can, or we'll have a Q&A section at the end if there's time. So also, we really welcome your input. And there's functionality on these webinars that if you want to press the raise hand button, we can prompt you to unmute yourself and you can contribute your views or your questions. We really want to try and make this as interactive as possible to try and harness the experience of the group. We've got a really broad cross-section of people, different industries, different functional areas, different levels. So it'd be great to get your thoughts as we go. So just as we're looking at, we've got, I think most people are saying they kind of sometimes or rarely review that candidate experience. Just in terms of the candidate journey, the one that seems to be the most challenging is measuring experience and continuous improvement. I know that Candice is going to touch on pretty much all of these areas, but it'd be great if we could kind of deep dive into that a little bit, just to address the one that seems to be the real priority for people.
Awesome. So should we get stuck into it?
Yeah, that's enough for me. Candice, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, awesome. So I just want to start by setting the scene. So you can ponder this question as I set the scene, I guess, as to why we're here and why this topic is so important. So we all know the job market, especially in New Zealand, is undeniably tough right now, with stats publishing the latest unemployment rate is 4.6% in June this year. We're seeing an influx of job seekers and an increased pressure on already stretched and burnt out hiring teams. As a result, we're experiencing hiring processes slowing down, the quality of hiring experiences declining, and everybody is feeling the strain. And in this era of information, or perhaps information overload, sometimes it can be really difficult to know what will truly drive success for your organisation. So today we're going to explore the candidate experience, why it's critical, and a range of practical ideas that you and your teams might consider implementing to navigate some of these challenges and improve the quality of candidate experience and ultimately your brand experience. So when we're talking about candidate experience, what we're referring to is essentially every interaction talent has with your organisation. This can be intentional or unintentional. From the first exposure of your brand through job postings or social media initiatives, right through to the kind of final stages of onboarding through a hiring process. And the experience here is largely shaped by your approach to communication, your process efficiency, and your overall transparency. Importantly, how you treat candidates reflects how you're going to treat employees. And a positive candidate experience, we know, can boost things like talent attraction, job offer acceptance, but it also enhances your brand advocacy and talent retention. And now on the other side, negative candidate experience can impact more than just recruitment. They can actually affect your business's bottom line and consumer behaviour. Can everybody hear me okay? Sorry, I just saw a comment there. Good to keep going?
I can hear fine.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. So really interesting, there's been a bunch of studies about the kind of relationship of candidate experiences and impact on consumer behaviours. And some key themes here just to ponder on. Majority of job seekers, around 60%, said that a bad candidate experience would make them less likely to purchase products from the employer. And about half said they wouldn't purchase goods or services from a company after a bad hiring experience. And interestingly, it was back in 2006, but a great way to illustrate this, Virgin Media in the UK estimated a £4.4 million annual loss due to poor candidate experiences, leading to cancelled subscriptions. So a really important concept here to remember, that candidates and customers can be both with respect to your brand and organisation. I think a really fantastic way to kind of summarize the why here is from the wise Maya Angelou, who famously said that people will never forget how you made them feel. And this is a really important concept that's going to help shape our discussion today on candidate experience and how your brand is perceived in the market. So to begin, where to start? Optimizing your candidate experience really begins with a genuine commitment to your candidates. You can start here by identifying or thinking about the key principles or commitments that you want to be making to your candidates through the hiring process, and define what they look like in action to create a shared understanding and expectation with anybody involved in your hiring processes. To illustrate this, these are just some ideas. I'm not suggesting that this is prescriptive, but these might be what your candidate commitments could look like and be defined. So if we're looking at a commitment to communication for our candidates, we want to be ensuring clear, timely and respectful communication with candidates. And importantly, a zero tolerance for ghosting. What this could look like in action, you might implement service level agreements at each stage of the process, or perhaps a circle back initiative with each candidate or each role and process with a specific date and time to close the loop with every single candidate. Or it could just simply be allocating time for the candidate to ask questions at every single stage of the process. So again, there's that two-way street in the hiring process. Now, I won't read through all of these, but you can have a read through these as we're talking. But importantly here, the concept that I'm really trying to convey is committing, setting some commitments or designing commitments to your candidates is really going to underpin or anchor your approach to facilitating a consistent, compelling and engaging candidate experience. If you think about each principle and what that looks like in action, that will help influence your decision making. This can also be a really great tool for your recruiters to use or to lean on if they're particularly struggling to seek buy-in from senior stakeholders, or perhaps influencing, those stakeholders that express their, longevity or long-standing experience with hiring, but they just need to be influenced in alignment with some better practices or best practices. So I really want to get into kind of the macro sections of each process here to ensure that we can explore what optimizing a candidate experience could look like at each stage of the process, and some different ideas here for you to reflect on. So with respect to employer branding and talent attraction, what we're talking about here is really your strategy to attract top talent by authentically showcasing your organization's value proposition and culture across the various platforms. I'm a strong advocate for the time always being now for working on your employer brand and promoting your employer brand rather than it being seen as a sort of silo exercise. So just be thinking about, those various opportunities you can do to organically and authentically promote your employer brand. So some ideas here about how you might optimize for a candidate experience. With respect to recruitment marketing, there's a great concept here to collaborate with your sales and marketing teams either quarterly or at the start of a financial year to plan what your recruitment marketing strategy might look like in a calendar of specific events or initiatives that you might launch at various stages of the year. If you already know what your hiring plan is going to look like for the year, excellent. You can be a little bit more strategic with your decision making here. But if you don't, if the business is taking a bit of a conservative approach to hiring or perhaps more reactive, then you can ensure that you have some really compelling, marketing initiatives or projects in the works to use as an attraction tool for your roles in your organization through the year. It's a really cool example here from McDonald's where when they were doing a bulk hiring campaign in the past, when they were servicing orders, customer orders, they asked, would you like a job with that? A playful spin on there, would you like fries with that? Which is, again, just a unique way that's true to their brand that appeals to customers who could also be candidates or key talent that are advocates of the brand already. With respect to brand experiences, create compelling content that showcases your employer brand on the platforms where your target audience is most active. With this, you could offer immersive and or personalized experiences to engage talent with your brand before they engage in a specific role. So for example, you might create a career quiz to see what roles specifically at your organization could suit talent. Or to provide a specific example for you, when I was working at Xero and we launched our remote hiring policy, we used this as a really great brand experience opportunity and talent attraction campaign through LinkedIn by offering a work style quiz for people to determine what their preferred work style is, and then a link onto the open roles related to that work style. So again, make sure there's a clear call to action and a really easy way to participate in these immersive experiences to help talent become sticky to your brand, essentially. With respect to a careers page, I know sometimes this can be a challenge with the investment required, but my advice is just to start somewhere and build on it. If you can invest in a dynamic careers page that authentically highlights the people behind your brand, it's a really excellent way to attract talent. We know representation matters, so you can use storytelling of existing employees to showcase their authentic testimonial about the company, their experience in the hiring process, why it works for them, etc., with a clear call to action to seek jobs or join your talent community or whatever the case might be in terms of your call to action. And on that point, I really love this concept of including a simple way for candidates to subscribe to your talent community. So this might be where perhaps a specific job is not currently available for your talent, but you're inviting them to join your community where you can push curated content, promote your company brand, achievements, roles. It might be a strategy also to maintain connections with your alumni. We know that the boomerang hiring strategy is also a really effective one. And again, another strategy or way to keep talent sticky to your brand. What I really love to see with careers pages is the transparency where you can detail and demonstrate your process upfront. So irrespective of the role, at a high level, this is our approach to hiring. This is what you can expect to experience with any role that we are hiring. This just really helps talent understand, what the expectations or what the experience might look like right from the outset. Importantly, with any initiatives related to these concepts is to make sure that you're responsive to candidate inquiries as quickly as possible during this attraction phase to not only build that connection, but trust. There's nothing worse than subscribing to a talent community and then hearing nothing or experiencing nothing. So make sure you've got those actions in place. Awesome. So looking at the hiring plan and education, and everyone, you'll appreciate I've sort of merged some big themes here together just to make sure we can get through all the content. So in this section, what we're exploring is essentially having a really critical foundation in place to prepare for a well-structured, effective and efficient hiring process and experience before we actually go active on the market. So in your job briefing stage, this is a fabulous opportunity to actually coach and engage with your hiring manager to collaborate on what the requirements are, the role is, clearly define that and start building a really detailed candidate profile. This will later help you optimize your adverts for search engine optimization, or perhaps if you're doing proactive talent pooling, you can be really specific about what you're targeting there. With respect to assessment criteria, a key point here is not only to design and define the candidate experience, but also the assessment experience. So this will include defining clear stages of your assessment process, the purpose of each, questions that you may ask, and clear user guides, so it's facilitated consistently. But what I mean by assessment experience for clarity is the balance between what you need to assess and evaluate, but really what you want candidates to feel and experience at each stage. So again, this two-way street that we know exists within hiring. What is the candidate going to experience and take away or learn from or get more excited about with respect to this opportunity with the way that you've designed this experience? With respect to assessment scorecards, so this is really a great best practice for inclusive hiring, ensuring a fair and consistent approach to evaluating candidates and making good hiring decisions. So this is about evaluating clear criteria and an objective scoring matrix for fairness and consistency. A key point here is to focus on your skills and competencies that are relevant to successfully performing the role. With respect to the hiring manager team meeting here, a really great idea is before you go to market, get everybody involved in the hiring process, aligned on what the hiring objectives are, the expectations, clear roles and responsibilities, and essentially how you're going to partner together to achieve a great hiring outcome. So concepts you might include in this meeting are things like inclusive hiring, a commitment to your SLAs or the candidate commitments that you've established early. It could be a really great opportunity to also do some scheduling and time blocking in advance so you can expedite candidates through the process later. A great tip for this is to actually, depending on whether you're doing a bespoke hire or a volume hire, to block times with different interview panels to mitigate that risk of interviewer overload or interviewer overwhelm. And if you don't put candidates into those slots within 24 hours, that block can be released, and the person in the hiring team that hit that calendar block can utilize that time for whatever they want. So it just helps you reduce the friction of booking interviews or having regular connection points to expedite a process and really start transitioning from that reactive way of hiring to more proactive and planned. Now, some tips here for this section are to develop templates for consistent use across your talent team or your HR team if they're the ones who are doing the hiring within your organisation. If you work in a model that is distributed or perhaps have an asynchronous approach to work, you can also record these briefings in advance so people can independently view it at a time that suits them, and perhaps then just schedule a shorter stand-up or Q&A type meeting to align or clarify any uncertainties or questions if needed. It's a great strategy to kind of continuously iterating on micro-learning resources as well. So as your hiring teams change or evolve over time, you've got a consistent resource library of micro-learning resources to really help drive consistency, but also the expectations of playing that role within your hiring experience. And with respect to the design, I think really important to keep your interview stages sharp and purposeful. I think on average, somewhere around 4 stages that are well structured and thorough and planned should be sufficient enough to enable not only a quality hiring decision, but also a really positive candidate experience. Awesome. So with respect to sourcing and engagement, what we're talking about here is really your approach to identifying key talent, how you're going to start creating that strong connection with your brand. And as I've mentioned a couple of times again, like what's going to make them really sticky to your brand? What will make them engaged to your brand, and how can you influence that? So first and foremost, focus on accessibility and keep it really simple. Streamline your application process by eliminating anything that's unnecessary. That could be, various filters or things like cover letters if they're not pertinent to your hiring process or decision-making process. Things like salary filters, or just, a clunky experience to apply if they are needing to create an email address or needing to manually enter information on their CV into the application form. Things like that are really clunky, take up a lot of time, and aren't necessarily a positive experience for candidates. If you are using tooling with your hiring process and you have something like an applicant tracking system, really great or important to ensure that you can integrate this as much as possible with other advertising platforms, not only to minimize the candidate effort and friction that could potentially exist within an application process, but also to ensure that the return on investment insights that you're getting, whether that just be from source or cost per hire, etc., it is really accurate, and you can influence again what your recruitment spend looks like annually and what's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak. Important to always be authentic. Your brand has an authenticity in the market, so leverage that and extend on that. You can engage candidates through personalization when you're reaching out. That's always a nicer experience than something bold and cold, so to speak. Humanize your advertising experience. Dare to be different, be creative. You might introduce your recruiter and kind of humanize the advertising process, or perhaps include a hiring manager bio in your advert. So who this role is actually going to be reporting into, and what's important to know about them, or again, what the prospect of this role could mean for you by learning or working along someone in this hiring manager position. Perhaps if you're running a bulk hiring campaign or something like a graduate program, advertising creatively through things like videos that feature team members who perform the role can be a really compelling way to give candidates a sense of the team and culture. Just ensuring there's a compelling call to action, of course, so that that the candidates that you're engaging have somewhere to channel that interest. And ensure that you are crafting and compelling a really important what's in it for you. So understand what the candidate drivers will be in the current market, what that kind of relationship is with your brand, and appeal to that. So your values, the motivation of the candidate, are really highlighted in your adverts there. With respect to transparency, really important to keep your adverts clear and be as thorough as you can in sharing details. Highlight what you're looking for and equally what you're not. So you're differentiating your must and nice to haves, but do avoid turning your advert into a shopping list. There's nothing worse than reading through a list of requirements and perhaps feeling insignificant if you only match 3 of those. So just be really clear about what you're looking for and what a great candidate looks like for you. If you can, share things like salary ranges, be upfront about the process, what's involved, timelines, what the expected time investment would be for candidates, and advertise in a way that's most pertinent to your role. So if you are wanting to prioritize quality, you might set a closing date in your advert and give candidates enough time to put forward a really quality application. If you actually need to optimize for speed, you might mention that the role will stay open until you find the right candidate. You'll be processing CVs and actioning them quickly. So a quick application is best, but you just want to call that out from the outset to ensure you're as transparent as possible and you're managing those expectations up front. Similarly, on this concept of enablement and communication, I think really important to explore this concept of how you can set your candidates up for success. One way you could do this is by including a candidate information pack. If perhaps you don't have a careers page and can include all the information on there, you might look to include this candidate information pack alongside your application acknowledgement form. This could include, or should include at a minimum, in my opinion, the position description, details around benefits, or anything really compelling about your organisation. But it could also include things like FAQs that most candidates want to know and would spend time wanting to ask perhaps in a later conversation upfront. This is going to ensure that you can have quality conversations later and really focus on the things that matter most to you and to the candidate. You can automate your follow-ups as well, so tailor interactions to make each candidate feel valued. If you don't have an update, even providing an update with no news is 100% better than silence. And it helps you prevent this kind of ghosting narrative that we're hearing quite a lot in the market. If you do have an applicant tracking system, you can actually leverage features within your ATS to highlight either stale candidates. So you might set a time frame of 2 weeks or whatever it looks like that you haven't contacted a candidate, and that'll serve up the candidates that you need to close loop with. It could also just be simply SLAs that you adhere to. Or, hey, if you're still in the spreadsheet days, and no judgment there, we all start somewhere, it might just be a case of recording the date, the last time you contacted them, and setting your spreadsheet by last contact date to action the same. Now, some tips here. So the quality of your advert is going to directly influence the quality of your talent pool, and quality of application is, a really important thing to be considering when we're thinking about the volume that we're all experiencing with adverts these days and wanting to ensure we are engaging the best talent in the market, not just filling the role. So again, focus on creating clear, engaging and targeting postings. A really important concept that I want to convey here is to mind your front doors. And what I mean by that is to be really mindful around the different source types that you have and the different candidate experience that could be relative to both. So for example, if you have candidates coming through your careers page, LinkedIn, Seek, your employee referrals program, an agency, what are the different experiences that they may have up front, and how can you ensure that that experience is aligned with what you want it to be? On the concept of agencies, a really important point here is to take your time, do your research, and partner with agencies that align with your brand, your values, and essentially would act as an extension of your team, of your brand. Make sure you set clear expectations, have regular performance discussions, and bring them into your brand so that they can represent you in the best way. At Xero, I ran a very thorough process on establishing a PSL. I think agencies absolutely want to win business and perform well, but really important to align with agencies and partner with agencies that represent you in the best way, that you trust, and that can deliver to your needs as well, especially if you have niche talent requirements in your organisation. A couple of other things here just quickly. So with respect to revisiting talent, or perhaps talent pooling for your signature capabilities in your organisation, use a consistent list of tags to make sure your team are all familiar with what the tags are that you want to use, so it's consistent for searching later. And really think about how you can amplify your existing brand advocates through perhaps incentivizing something like a employee referral program, where people can authentically share job opportunities through their own social media networks or platforms that they exist within. It's going to take a quick drink. Okay. Awesome. So we'll explore screening and interviewing now, and I've broken this down into 4 stages just to make sure we can cover all the content. So in this section, what we're really exploring is our approach to carefully assessing candidates against role criteria, through structured phone screens, interviews and assessments. And the goal in this stage of the candidate experience is to create a positive experience, setting your candidates up for success and enabling valuable feedback loops, really importantly. So when we look at the CV review, some tips here to optimize for a great candidate experience, especially in a kind of voluminous candidate market, is to be intentional with your time and be really present with this task. So you might set focus time for screening and batch screen candidates or different roles if you're managing multiple in a specific time and place, or perhaps just simply by muting your notifications and other tools. This is going to help you make really consistent and fair decisions on who to progress to a phone screen, aligned with your role criteria as well. So on that topic, adhering to inclusive hiring practices, really important. Apply your objective scoring matrix here so you can action decisions quickly but consistently. And the theme or the idea I want to spend probably most time on in this section is around feedback loops. So I think quite often at this stage, organizations might just do bulk automatic rejections to say, hey, you're not progressing, or we've had a high volume of responses and we can't progress everyone, something to that effect. But something you can do to really stand out, be different, and really build the value of your brand is to collect and aggregate general themes for why candidates are progressing or are not progressing. And you can actually use this to provide meaningful candidate feedback later. So it's not necessarily personalized, but within this aggregate theming of reasons that candidates haven't been progressed, aligned with your job criteria, you can provide really clear rationale and feedback as to why you haven't progressed someone. And this is really important to focus on communicating valuable information. I think especially in the current market where most candidates would be exploring multiple jobs at a time, candidates are less interested in you're receiving a high volume of applications or whatever that may be, even if it's true. They're more interested in the what's in it for them. So why weren't they selected, and how have you kind of made that decision? So this is a really cool tip to do this effectively at scale, but create a really meaningful experience at the same time. Awesome. So with respect to phone screening, I'm always a big fan of, moving your hiring processes along as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So schedule your phone screens promptly. Try to mitigate, big periods of time between reviewing a CV and actually actioning a call if this forms part of your process. You can communicate dates in advance and offer flexible timings for calls to reduce candidate anxiety around the call, but also to ensure the call is quality. So to mitigate this becoming a manual task, there's so many scheduling tools out there that you can add on to your tools, or just, integrate it if that exists within your ATS, that's great. But this kind of takes the manual effort off you, ensures that you're speaking to a candidate at a time that works for them, and you're setting up for a quality conversation. Other concepts here around preparing for quality conversations is through providing candidates with all the necessary information upfront. This could be an agenda for your call, so what you'll cover, the length of the call, again, the position description, and perhaps some FAQs. So what might, typically take someone 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever the case might be to conduct a thorough phone screen and get the information that they need, you could reduce this down to sort of 15 minutes or so per candidate by preparing for quality. Another idea here is to utilize your scorecards, of course, but to support or enable you to be really present and engaged in the conversation is to consider the use of perhaps some different tools to capture phone screening notes for you. There's so many tools that are on the market and surfacing in this space that can not only capture the screening notes for you, but also analyze the sentiment. This could reduce bias and ensure an engaging conversation, but it also takes away probably one of the most biggest kind of drivers of time with respect to phone screening notes. I think in my career, I've witnessed lots of people having conversations and leaving notes later. They either miss key information or there's just a lot of admin to catch up on at the end of the day. So save time and save creating extra work for yourself by considering the use of some of these different tools on the market at the moment. Again, this is a concept we all know, but important reminder to ensure these phone screening conversations are two-way. I think when we're talking to a lot of candidates and we just need the information to make the decisions, we're at risk of the experience being more like an interrogation than a conversation. So make sure you take the time to, or reserve the time for the candidate to ask the questions that are most important to them. If you've got FAQs that you've answered in advance, you might find that this is perhaps one or two, and it might be more around your perception of the opportunity or your experience that's going to help advocate for your brand rather than just some of the more transactional questions. And again here, the feedback loop point. So ensure that you explain to candidates how they will receive feedback and when. At this stage, I think it's common to provide feedback via email if you're not progressing a candidate. And if you are choosing to do that, it's also a great time to share a link to your candidate satisfaction survey. So you can share those aggregate themes for perhaps why the candidate isn't progressing, and then invite them to share their experience or share their voice or provide feedback as well. So you're, influencing that experience of type feedback loops that you can use later to drive improvements on experience and your process. Okay. So pre-interview, really important again to set up for success here. So with respect to candidate enablement, set expectations clearly, provide comprehensive details around what the interview experience will involve, not only including who they'll meet, but what to expect. So again, this could be an agenda or just a overarching provision of how the time will be spent, and some information around how they can best prepare to put their best selves forward. Ensure that any necessary accommodations are in place, again, for ensuring fair and inclusive processes. And go the extra mile to provide guidance on how to find the interview location, if it's a in-person interview, or perhaps provide best practices on remote interviewing, particularly if it's going to be for an extended period of time or using multiple tools, etc. Maintain your contact. So if there's time between stages of when you have called a candidate, or there's a slight lag for whatever reason between when interviews are happening, ensure you maintain regular contact with candidates to keep them engaged and informed. Some additional contact ideas here that you could perhaps implement is 24 hours or at least before an interview, reconnect with your candidate, give them a call, check in with how they're feeling, confirm all the details, answer any questions that they have, offer some supportive words of advice, whatever that may look like, and really empower them to put their best foot forward. Another nice tip here is to also flick them a text or something similar a couple of hours before. You can schedule this through your ATS if your ATS has text function, or you could prepare it in advance as well through your own mobile phone if you're comfortable using that. So it's just a really nice touch to know that you're thinking about your candidates and you're really keen to support them to put their best foot forward. Now, a really important concept here on this stage is the idea of having an interview panel pre-meet. So if you're not doing this already, this is a really great idea to ensure that the experience that you give your candidates is, first class, in addition to assessing the key things that you need to learn about them. So leverage your diverse interview panels, of course, to obtain varied perspectives, but then get the panel together and coach them on how to create a positive interviewing experience. This could be facilitation tips, right down to kind of where to sit in the room so that it's not uncomfortable or awkward for a candidate. It could be around assigning key roles and responsibilities. So I might say, hey, Dave, you lead the interview and I'll come in with the introductions. It could be, Dave, can you be the timekeeper, and I'll make sure, whatever else needs to happen in that setting, if it's a tech setup or something like that, so that you're not sort of clunking around and clunkily exchanging, audibly what you need to do and how you need to do it. It ensures really smooth transitions, but it also creates a warm and safe feeling, engaging environment for candidates as well. So to aid this, whilst at Xero, I developed a kind of an interview run sheet, essentially, which not only had the criteria of what we needed to cover, but who was going to lead what section, the time that we would allow for each section, and again, of course, the objective scoring matrix at the end of that as well. So everything was fair and consistent.
Candice, just to, sorry to jump in, I'm just thinking, in the interest of time, just referring back to the poll that we did earlier, two of the priorities that really came up for people were measuring experience and continuous improvement, but also the post-offer and onboarding. I just wonder if we should sort of skip ahead a little bit. I think you're happy to share these slides with the attendees today afterwards, so I'm sure they can kind of dive into that. But do you want to just sort of push forward a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And sorry, team, as you can tell, I'm a bit of a geek for the subject, so I just lose myself a little bit in the content. This is a really great example of needing to time geek. So let's skip ahead, sorry, to the oops, one more, is it? The measuring experience.
The post-offer, I think, was the key one, but the main one was measuring experience.
Okay, cool. I won't read through everything here, but just some quick key concepts here. Really importantly, I think when you're managing the transition between somebody, becoming an employee and wanting to embed in the team, is to make sure your pre-employment process is simple, clean, and clear. You don't want to lose people to a clunky pre-employment check. Perhaps explore the idea of a suppliers in delight experience. So you might be sending out their hardware before their first day. Alongside that, you could send a little gesture to welcome them and help foster that sense of belonging. And really importantly, ensure you have a transition plan. I appreciate the responsibility of this doesn't always sit within talent, but depending on how your organization is set up, ensure that you are providing as much detail and insight here to ensure this happens for your candidate to provide a really important onboarding experience. Now, with respect to measures and continuous improvement, this is really about the ongoing evaluation of your hiring process and how to identify opportunities to continue optimizing your candidate experience or just drive improvements of your hiring process to really strengthen your employer brand. If you aren't doing this already, I highly recommend implementing candidate satisfaction surveys and hiring manager satisfaction surveys to give you the different perspectives around what you're doing well and what could be better from your key stakeholders. When you're designing what to include in that, my advice is to measure what matters most to you in your hiring goals. So hopefully you weren't expecting a prescriptive list of measures to use. It really depends on what your goals are and what's going to drive the most meaningful insights and therefore actions for your organization. So I'm happy to explore this with you further if you have specific cases that you want advice on. Thinking about the inside out approach here too, so evaluating your own team performance, whether you have ATS that helps you measure that or not, but use these insights to identify what your team does well, either in an individual or collective performance perspective, and feed these insights back to your team in team meetings. You could then initiate activities around performance improvement through sharing insights or conducting retrospectives on hiring experience that perhaps went slightly awry, reset some objectives, measure, etc. So the concept here is really around testing, learning, and iterating. Take an approach to experiment at a smaller scale before you make a wholesale change as well, to see how it works and where the friction points are and what you can do differently or better. I know we're at time, so I'll pause there, shall I, Dave?
Well, we can finish this off. I mean, I guess if people have to go, they can go. But if you want to just cover off these final few points.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So another idea here is to also use these data and insights to actually celebrate your success, identify what you're doing well, again at an individual or collective team perspective, and celebrate that internally, but also more broadly if you have an action to kind of enhance the value proposition of your recruitment team or your HR team. Use this type of data to really influence and advocate for the value. You can use this data to also perhaps advocate for further investment or demonstrate, the return on investment that you would get through investing in your hiring process. Again, so it's less of an afterthought or reactive measure, and it really helps you curate and create something meaningful that's going to really propel and amplify your employer brand. You could potentially take an extra step here by promoting your employer brand through sharing your candidate satisfaction surveys or your commitment to improving experiences on your careers page. I've seen a couple of organisations do that. This also can help you, I think, so I was going to say regain control. That's probably not the right phrase, but just kind of challenge, some of the concepts or data perhaps that candidates explore through the likes of a Glassdoor or something like that. You can put your own narrative and take ownership of it, and also describe what you're going to do about it if there is a bit of a improvement or fix that needs to happen there. So again, just some different ideas to consider. And then the so what now what, and I know that we've skipped a couple of stages, so Dave said I'll happily share this out for you to review, and you can reach out to me if you have any questions. But hopefully something has influenced some thought or resonated with you through what we have been able to cover today. And I just really encourage you to go back to your organisations and firstly reflect on your current state. Analysis, if you want to take it a step further, you could perhaps create a test profile and experience the application process or hiring process firsthand and from your candidate's perspective. So you can not only identify what you're doing well, but also what could be better, and you'll start to understand or start to observe what your hiring process is currently optimized for. Is it optimized purely for process efficiency to make your job easier from a task perspective, or is it optimized for candidate experience, or perhaps it's doing really well and it's optimized for growth? That's great. Map the candidate journey, again, noting those various front doors or sources that candidates can come through and what that experience would look like, and again, whether there's opportunities to improve that or adjust that slightly. Ensure the kind of ease of participating, as we talked about, is simplified where you can. If you're currently using an ATS and perhaps the functionality is not where you want it to be, or perhaps you're not in love with it but you're locked into a contract, have those conversations with your providers, explain what's working, what isn't, what you would want it to be, and then perhaps start exploring the idea of shifting off that ATS, or just explore what you can do differently so you don't kind of get locked into another contract quickly if you haven't prepared for that. And map all the other technical tools that you use and the technical roadmap that underpins your hiring experience. If you can, make sure they're integrated. If they're standalone, I'd say be curious as to why. Are there different tools you can use to optimize for your return on investment, but also ensure a really great experience as well. Another concept here is to conduct a thorough time study. This is something I did regularly at Xero. It not only helps me understand how I can support and enable my team to be more efficient with their time, but also opportunities where we can perhaps implement further automation or simplify our approach to different tasks to make it efficient, effective, but also a really good use of time, what's going to leverage the greatest value and impact. And then, as we talked about here, measure what matters. So understand what's most important to your organisation and their hiring goals, and define the measures that are most relevant to that. Identify your baseline. If you don't have surveys and things that exist, this is a really great way to start actually accessing some data around your current state. You can also research external sentiment about your brand to understand market perception and different kind of levels of advocacy through the likes of Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Seek, etc. Noting negative reviews on Glassdoor will probably discourage more candidates than encourage them to apply. So just thinking about how you can influence that. And then perhaps just commit to a couple of trends that you prioritize through for in a quarter, and how you can just shift the needle. That concept of 1% changes, as James Clear talks about, is better than the wholesale change or trying to boil the ocean. Think about taking the action on implementing candidate commitments to adhere to. Review your communication templates. There's plenty of tools out there that can help amplify your thoughts and simplify this or expedite this process for you, whether that's the likes of ChatGPT, but ensuring you have the overarching hold of the pen to ensure it's your authentic voice. And then, as I've mentioned before, test, learn, iterate, experiment small, before making wholesale changes. And and you'll be flying. This can actually be a really great exercise for your team to conduct, or you perhaps could assign this task to perhaps one of the seniors or leads in your team, or you might break it up so everybody has a chance to really invest in this, enhance that connection to purpose, and promote a high-performing team environment as well. That's it.
Fantastic. I really love that framework. I think as the poll showed, people don't necessarily have a sort of a methodical kind of way to evaluate candidate experience. So I think having that there is super useful. Just a quick question from somebody before we finish up. Just going back to the phone screen tools that you mentioned, is there anything specific that you could recommend in terms of the tools that you've used for phone screening?
It's in terms of, sorry, the perhaps AI assisted tooling, or for scheduling?
To capture interview notes. I think you mentioned tools there. We use Fathom. We also used Fireflies as well, which is pretty good. Just a good way of capturing interview notes and kind of summarizing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Fireflies is quite common. Another one that's getting a bit of attention at the moment, I haven't used it personally, but it seems to be very well regarded, especially in the US and UK, is MetaView, which is essentially just a product specific to this purpose. I think it has multiple use cases as well. Like you could use it on phone screens, but perhaps if you engage with your hiring managers remotely, it can, record and assess sentiment of perhaps a job briefing or something to that effect. So if you need to advocate for investment on these types of tools, you can do so. A lot of companies or tools are also helping you prepare for the kind of business case by templating the how and the why to invest. So you can kind of just copy and paste and add your specific details to kind of put a business case forward for that investment. But there are plenty. Like I could probably share a link with a bunch of comparative tools if you wanted to explore that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And somebody's mentioned in the chat, Checkmate is a really good tool too. So look, fantastic. I mean, we've run over, but I think for good reason. There's a huge amount there, and just really good stuff. As I mentioned earlier, I think Candice is going to share a bit of a handout afterwards and the slides that she ran through today, so you guys can go through that at your leisure. But anyway, we will let you get on with your day. Thanks to all of you for attending. Thanks to Candice for the presentation. It was really, really fantastic, and we look forward to seeing you all again next time.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and be sure to reach out if you have other questions. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions for you, and thanks for hanging around. Sorry for talking too much. I really appreciate your time.
Likewise. Thanks a lot, Candice.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.